An IEC UL listed motor disconnect does meet the requirements of the NEC for a 480-volt motor. The NEC incorporates IEC standards through the National Electrical Manufacturers Association, or NEMA. NEMA publishes standards for electrical equipment, which includes motor disconnects. These standards are based on IEC standards. The UL, or Underwriters Laboratories, listing signifies that the motor disconnect has been tested and meets the safety requirements of Underwriters Laboratories. This listing indicates that the disconnect complies with the applicable NEMA standards, which in turn are based on IEC standards. Therefore, a motor disconnect with an IEC and a UL listing has been reviewed and certified to meet both international, that is IEC, and national, that is NEC, safety standards. Now let's discuss additional considerations. If the motor disconnect will be installed solely for lockout or tagout purposes, ensure these three things. Firstly, the disconnect is clearly labeled as a lockout/tagout device. Secondly, it is installed in a location where it is easily accessible and visible. Thirdly, it complies with the requirements of OSHA's Lockout/Tagout Standard 29 Code of Federal Regulations 1910.147. Based on the information provided, an IEC UL listed motor disconnect is suitable for installation per the NEC for a 480-volt motor, assuming all other NEC requirements are met. Delving deeper into the NEC and IEC standards and their relevance to motor disconnects, we can explore the specific sections of the NEC that address motor control circuits and disconnecting means. While the NEC doesn't explicitly list IEC standards, it recognizes equipment that is listed and labeled by a recognized testing laboratory, such as UL, which tests products to both UL standards and other applicable standards, including those harmonized with IEC. The key is that the equipment, regardless of its origin or the standards it was initially designed to meet, must be suitable for the intended purpose and comply with the relevant articles in the NEC. For a 480-volt motor, Article 430 in the NEC is the primary reference for motors, motor circuits, and controllers. This article covers a wide range of requirements, including motor circuit conductors, overload protection, motor control circuits, and disconnecting means. Section 430.101 of the NEC generally requires a disconnecting means to be provided for each motor. This disconnecting means must be readily accessible and located within sight from the motor and the driven machinery location. The purpose of the disconnect is to provide a way to de-energize the motor for maintenance and repair, as well as for safety during emergencies. The NEC further specifies the requirements for the disconnecting means in subsequent sections. For example, Section 430.102 outlines the location requirements, and Section 430.109 details the types of disconnects permitted. These disconnects can range from simple manual switches to more sophisticated circuit breakers or motor controllers with disconnecting capabilities. The suitability of a specific disconnect for use with a 480-volt motor depends on several factors, including its voltage rating, current rating, interrupting capacity, and the environment in which it will be installed. The disconnect must have a voltage rating equal to or greater than the system voltage, which in this case is 480 volts. Its current rating must be sufficient to handle the motor's full load current, as well as any potential of load or fault currents. The interrupting capacity of the disconnect must be adequate to safely interrupt the maximum available fault current at the installation location. This is a critical safety consideration, as a disconnect with insufficient interrupting capacity could fail catastrophically during a fault, potentially leading to electrical shock, fire, or equipment damage. In addition to these basic requirements, the NEC also addresses specific requirements for motor control circuits. Article 725 covers the installation of Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3 remote control, signaling, and power limited circuits. These circuits are often used to control motor starters, contactors, and other motor control devices. The NEC specifies the wiring methods, overcurrent protection, and other requirements for these circuits to ensure safety and reliability. Returning to the topic of IEC standards, it's important to understand how these standards relate to UL listing and NEC compliance. IEC standards are developed by the International Electrotechnical Commission, a global organization that prepares and publishes international standards for all electrical, electronic, and related technologies. These standards cover a wide range of topics, including electrical safety, performance, and testing. While the NEC is primarily based on North American practices and standards, it does recognize and incorporate aspects of IEC standards through UL listing and other means. When a product is UL listed, it means that UL has tested the product to ensure that it meets the applicable safety requirements. These requirements may be based on UL standards, IEC standards, or a combination of both. UL also conducts regular factory inspections to ensure that manufacturers continue to produce products that meet the listing requirements. The CE marking, which stands for Conformité European, is a mandatory conformity marking for certain products sold within the European Economic Area. The CE marking indicates that the product meets the essential requirements of the applicable European Union directives. These directives cover a wide range of topics, including safety, health, and environmental protection. While the CE marking is primarily relevant for products sold in Europe, it can also be an indication of the product's overall quality and compliance with international standards. In the context of motor disconnects, a product with both UL listing and CE marking has been evaluated to meet both North American and European safety requirements. This can provide an additional level of assurance that the product is suitable for use in a variety of applications and environments. However, it's important to note that the CE marking is not a substitute for UL listing or other certifications that may be required by local codes and regulations. The statement that NEMA publishes standards for electrical equipment, including motor disconnects, that are based on IEC standards needs further clarification. NEMA does develop standards for electrical equipment, and these standards often take into account IEC standards. However, NEMA standards are not simply direct translations or adoptions of IEC standards. Instead, NEMA standards are developed by industry experts and stakeholders in North America, and they reflect the specific needs and practices of the North American market. NEMA standards may reference or incorporate aspects of IEC standards, but they are ultimately tailored to the North American electrical system and regulatory environment. For example, NEMA standards for motor starters and contactors may reference IEC standards for performance and testing, but they will also include requirements that are specific to the NEC and other North American codes and standards. Therefore, it's more accurate to say that NEMA standards are harmonized with IEC standards rather than being directly based on them. When selecting a motor disconnect for a specific application, it's important to consider all of the relevant factors, including the voltage rating, current rating, interrupting capacity, environmental conditions, and applicable codes and standards. A disconnect that is UL listed and CE marked is likely to meet the basic safety requirements, but it's still important to verify that it complies with all of the applicable requirements of the NEC and any other local codes or regulations. In addition to these technical considerations, it's also important to consider the practical aspects of installing and using the disconnect. The disconnect should be readily accessible and easy to operate, and it should be clearly labeled to indicate its purpose and function. It should also be installed in a location where it is protected from physical damage and environmental hazards. If the disconnect is being installed for lockout/tagout purposes, it should be designed to be easily locked in the open position, and it should be compatible with the facility's lockout/tagout procedures. The OSHA lockout/tagout standard, 29 Code of Federal Regulations 1910.147, establishes requirements for controlling hazardous energy during servicing and maintenance of machines and equipment. This standard is designed to protect employees from the hazards of unexpected energization or startup of equipment, or release of stored energy. The standard requires employers to develop, implement, and enforce a lockout/tagout program that includes written procedures, employee training, and periodic inspections. The lockout/tagout procedures must identify the specific steps that are necessary to isolate and de-energize the equipment, and to prevent it from being accidentally energized or started up. These steps typically include disconnecting the equipment from its energy source, applying a lockout device to the energy isolating device, and verifying that the equipment is energized. The lockout device is a physical device, such as a lock or tag, that is used to prevent the energy isolating device from being operated. The tag provides a warning that the equipment is being serviced or maintained and that it should not be energized. The OSHA lockout/tagout standard also requires employers to provide training to employees who are authorized to perform lockout/tagout procedures, as well as to employees who work in areas where lockout/tagout is performed. The training must cover the purpose and function of the lockout/tagout program, the procedures for isolating and de-energizing equipment, and the requirements for using lockout devices and tags. In summary, the selection and installation of a motor disconnect for a 480-volt motor requires careful consideration of a variety of factors, including the voltage rating, current rating, interrupting capacity, environmental conditions, applicable codes and standards, and lockout/tagout requirements. A disconnect that is UL listed and CE marked is likely to meet the basic safety requirements, but it's still important to verify that it complies with all of the applicable requirements of the NEC and any other local codes or regulations. The installation should also be performed by qualified personnel who are familiar with the NEC and other applicable standards. Additionally, regular inspections and maintenance of the disconnect are essential to ensure its continued safe and reliable operation. Considering all these factors will contribute to a safe and compliant electrical installation. Furthermore, ongoing education and training on the latest updates to the NEC and other relevant standards are crucial for electrical professionals to stay informed and ensure that their work meets the highest safety standards.